Hello and welcome to #EventIcons. My name is Alex Plaxton. I am one of your hosts today with our wonderful Will Curran as well back this week. As I mentioned last week, we are very, very excited about this week's show. We've got four incredible guests. I think the last time we had this many people on the show was over a year ago. And we had to break our rule and bring everyone on because these people are amazing. They really are event icons. Arguably one of the most watched must-attend events in our current times, Inbound, continues to attract an incredible audience around brilliant programming, incredible networking, and with the launch of Inbound Studio, you now have a digital audience anyone can envy, all focused on the business of growing business. So we're very excited to introduce these guests to you. But I'll let Will introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. Will Curran, Endless Events. You guys kind of know who I am. It's like 120 episodes into this. But I'm excited for this week's episode. Alex and I have both been to this event, which is fantastic. So we've seen it firsthand, and we are excited to share with you these amazing event professionals who are going to talk a little bit about the behind the scenes. So, Alex, what do you say? Should we just start getting into the content?
Let's do it.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #EventIcons.
Presented by Endless Events.
The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Use the question panel on the webinar to submit your questions. Or you can hop on Twitter. Submit your questions with #EventIcons.
We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show.
Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook.
Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com.
Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons.
All right. So we have a packed hour ahead of us. Let's get into introducing our guests. First up, we have Kim Darling, who's the Senior Director leading Inbound, which is scaled from 2,800 attendees in 2012 to over 21,000 in 2017. She's also created and scaled the Inbound Studio, which is the year-round video show that has 1 million views a week. Kim, welcome to #EventIcons.
Thank you. Happy to be here, guys.
Great. And next up, we have Laura Moran, who is passionate about uncovering stories where pop culture, business, academia, and philanthropy intersect. Laura heads up Inbound's content and talent efforts for the brand's annual event and is host of Inbound Studio. Welcome, Laura. Laura's muted.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Silent intro.
Great. Next up, we have Elijah Clark-Ginsberg. Elijah worked on Inbound on and off since 2013. He led promotions for Inbound 2016, 2017. So if you've ever received an email in the last couple of years,
Elijah, across my inbox.
He now manages their attendee experience and technology. So welcome, Elijah.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And last, but certainly not least, we have Meghan Kenney, who is the executive producer at Inbound and has a strong background in events management, education, and leadership. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, so we got to dive into our first question. So everyone wants to know, like, obviously you guys are a very diverse team and your backgrounds are very diverse as well. So I think we each want to hear your stories as far as what got you to the events industry and kind of what got you involved to the point where you are today. So Kim, why don't you kick it off with the story of how you got involved doing this wonderful show known as Inbound?
So it's really funny to me to hear you say, hey, how did you get involved in the events industry? Because I honestly don't consider myself an event professional. It's really interesting. And I think that's very true of our team that, thank you for saying we are a diverse team with very diverse skill sets. In a nutshell, because my story can be a little long, I really have come from the tech industry and certainly have some events background. And everything that we do on the Inbound team really is centered around the idea of project management. And that is our core skill set that we really try and have as a common theme when you look at a team that produces events. And I can talk a little bit in a minute about how our team is scaled. But essentially, our team spans everything from, Megan's team that thinks about logistics, to Laura's team that thinks about content and talent and that pop culture part that we're so proud of on that sort of zeitgeist aspect of things, to what Elijah works on in terms of our tech stack. And, we've got various other members of our team. They're all very different skill sets. So the one discipline we all have is that project management discipline to really make sure that we're getting things done. So my personal story is I'm obviously a HubSpot employee. I'm very proud to be so. HubSpot's a great company to be a part of, and we're very thankful that we're growing and very quickly. And we're very thankful that HubSpot is forward-thinking and remarkable enough to think about running Inbound as its own brand and this sort of community play that really adds value to a community versus extracting it. And so for me, I was at LinkedIn prior to HubSpot, and I was actually their first employee when they opened their Dublin office in Ireland. If you can't tell from the accent, I am Irish. And my experience really has been these sort of two amazing hyper-growth tech companies, and thinking about a lot of the things I spend my day thinking about is scale, leverage, how do we find sort of one common way of doing something so as we're not trying to reinvent the wheel every day. So I hope that gives you a little bit of in the nutshell as to what my background has been. I've been working at HubSpot just a little bit over 5 years, and I've been working on Inbound close to almost 4 years at this point, which blows my mind. And I started off in our Dublin office working within the marketing team on our agency partner program, and then moved here to our Cambridge HQ to work on Inbound, and really started to think about scaling the team.
That's awesome. And I think we'll dive a lot more into a lot of the things that you talked about deeper into this episode. So I'm really excited to jump in there. All right, Laura, why don't you kick it off? Tell us a little bit about your story. What got you here today?
Sure thing. As Kim said, I don't think any of us necessarily have a traditional, this is how I got in the events industry type story, but my career started in journalism and PR. I graduated with a degree in journalism and pretty much quickly jumped into a role in PR at the Harvard Business Review, and then a couple other companies after that. So the companies I've worked at have always had a business, and as they've progressed, more and more of a tech focus. But my involvement had always really been at a PR level, and that always involved little bits of event planning along the way, but wasn't necessarily the primary day in, day out focus. That includes HubSpot. I joined HubSpot on the PR team and was very much focused on that. But because Inbound is here and has a lot of opportunities for different aspects of PR and different aspects of content creation, I got pretty involved from day one in that capacity. And then my interest and involvement only grew in terms of what that meant for Inbound itself. And last year, when we kicked off the Inbound studio in earnest, I fully officially joined the Inbound events team as my full-time job, really focused on what the Inbound studio was going to be for the brand and what that was going to look like, and really getting the opportunity to use some of the journalism skills and passion that I've always had in real time in the job. And over the past year, that's evolved to also include, thinking broadly and strategically about all of the content that we have at the event across all of our different stages, and who we're going to have and what stories we're going to tell. I think content is really the heart of what makes Inbound in terms of an event. And we are really proud of the different types of people and combinations of people and stories and, takeaways that we're able to bring to the stage with the different speakers that we have join us. And that has only expanded now that we're able to have the Inbound studio conversations that we have. And so that's kind of what got me into the seat I'm in now. But I would probably have to agree with Kim in terms of saying I don't necessarily walk around day in, day out saying that I'm a events industry professional. I think of it as a lot of additional things beyond just that title.
That's awesome. I think definitely, like you said, the content is a huge part of the heart of your guys' conference. And I think people are really going to be curious how you guys select your content, what you decide to do, and also how do you maximize the content that happens so it doesn't just live just inside the event. I have to avoid using the word conference because I know you guys don't like to be called a conference. So I love that.
Thank you.
All right, Elijah, the man who floods my email inbox and makes sure that I attend Inbound every year. Tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are today. Was it that non-traditional story, or where did you kind of come up from?
Yeah, I think like everyone has said, I definitely wouldn't really consider myself an event professional. I think even when I was every day flooding yours and other inboxes with messages about Inbound, I wouldn't really have considered myself a marketing professional in a lot of ways either. I think I've always been intrigued with Inbound, kind of the cross-section that we have between the experience that we're providing live and kind of the hospitality that we provide, and that sort of hospitality and UX bent is definitely what really captivates me and what has kept me so interested in the event space. And obviously I'm lucky that that's a big portion of my job these days. I fell into Inbound really completely by accident. I did college TV, which I think in a lot of ways is sort of an entryway into events. It's great for people who like to wear black and wear headsets and do live shows. So that was great. And we had a professional station manager when I was in school, and he left to go take a job at HubSpot. And a couple of years later, I got like a LinkedIn message being like, want to come be my intern. And I didn't get any other offers that summer. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And no idea what I was getting into, and had a fantastic summer kind of working on Inbound 2013. And ever since I've been hooked on it. So it was really completely by accident that I fell into it, but it's been a wonderful accident.
That's awesome. I love the story of, how they brought you in straight from college and then you just started working on Inbound all the time. So that's huge. And I think that's, you need that creativity too to come in, and obviously it shows in your guys' team. All right, Megan, last but not least, tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are today and what you're doing.
Sure. So like the rest of my team, definitely not a traditional events industry person, or even an industry person overall. So before I started here at HubSpot on the Inbound team, which was just in January, I worked in higher education. So I did that for a number of years, working with college students on their events and different programming across institutions and across schools. So that was my events background. And then I did some work with conference planning on a volunteer basis. So a little bit of a crossover there, but more from the education background. And I had the chance to attend Inbound last year and was super impressed, obviously, with the content and the production value, but was really impressed with the behind the scenes stuff, like the seamless nature of check-in and the great signage. And I've always really enjoyed the behind the scenes work and those pieces that you actually hope people don't notice because everything kind of goes really well. And then the position opened up, and I've been here since January and feel really fortunate to be a part of this team.
Awesome. Well, I think we have a great idea of who you are and how you got involved. Let's talk Inbound. So I know I've gone the last 3 years, and it blew my mind. You guys do an incredible job with not just the content and the education and the networking and the social aspect of it, but just the entire experience design, right? But I think when people think of an event like Inbound, they do think about the education and the information that they're going to get by coming. So let's talk education. When you're working on the learning design, what are you finding to be most effective for the participants? And as the event has scaled, how has looking at that content and the education changed?
Feel free to grab that one, anyone.
I can start to answer. I think, like I said, when I sort of introduced myself, I think just in general, content is at the heart of what we do. And it's always a major focus for us. And as the way that we break down the types of sessions that we have is that we've got, keynote sessions that are really intended to be broad reaching, inspiring, pretty much applicable to anyone and everyone that wants to sit down and listen to that person and pick their head up and think about something a different way or hear something a way they might not have heard it before. And I think there's education to be had there, of course, but we really go into those with like inspiration in mind, and, probably having people maybe have a notebook in their hand and jot some things down, but really just sitting in those seats and getting excited and sort of lighting a fire and a spark that's going to take them through the rest of the week and back to their desk and all of those great things. Then we have spotlight content, which is also on the larger stages. The audience for those is maybe 5,000 people, roughly. And the names of the speakers on those stages are recognizable and in many cases household names. But what we're looking to have them talk about starts to get a little bit further down into the weeds, if you will, than maybe what you might hear from a keynote. And so we pair interesting people together to draw out a new story or a new way of thinking. One of my personal favorites is from last year. We had Britt Marling and Issa Rae paired together, both content creators. Issa created Insecure for HBO and has, had a web series before that on YouTube. Britt created The OA for Netflix. And they're both start to finish. They are director, writer, creator, lead actress, all the things. And so we wanted to bring them together to talk about what it looks like to create content from beginning to end. Most people in the inbound audience are not filmmakers or TV show runners, but most people in the inbound audience are either creating content of some kind or working in an organization or a team that's responsible for creating content. And so what can they learn from two women who have trailblazed in many ways in their own personal industry about what that looks like and how they think about it and how they insert their own creativity or strategy into the type of content they're creating that anybody in that type of shoes could learn from, no matter what the platform is. And that ripples out across all of our different spotlight speakers. And then we have our breakout sessions, which is over 250 sessions over the course of the week, which really get more into the weeds. And those are the tactical sessions. And those are the what people are furiously typing on their computers or writing down in their notebook. What are the 5 things I'm going to take away from this and go write an email to my colleague about in the 15-minute break that comes after this, or bring back to my desk immediately. And that's evolved a little bit over the years as we've thought about it. This year, for instance, the way we've decided to think about the tracks that we're organizing the breakout content into is more around tactical areas. So we have a marketing track, a sales track, a customer service track, something that we're calling Elevate and Empower that sort of gets at more of the leadership culture side of things, and then a Grow with HubSpot track for the HubSpot content that's represented. And that, that's a shift in previous years where we might have thought about it as takeaways that you could get from this type of a track, or hacks, tips, and tricks was another one that we used to use. So we've shifted into departmental thinking, I think, to really be representative of the different types of people that are coming to inbound and have, can get something out of it and can learn from it. And we are making sure that we are bringing the right people in from those different industry areas to come be speakers on those stages and appropriately represent the trends or key topics that are hot in marketing right now or hot in sales right now, and getting at that. And then in terms of how we evaluate that stuff, we do a lot of surveys, and we ask our attendees to rate speakers and rate what they got the most value out of and what did they learn and what could be better and, what's changed. And I think something that we've learned there is we want to make sure that when we organize content and put it up on the agenda to explain to people what it is they have the opportunity to go see, that we're setting that expectation very clearly up front, that when you walk into this session, it's a entry level, pretty basic, but you're going to get everything you need to know, and that's where you're going here. But that session down the hall is like a deep dive into one very specific type of software, and if you use that software every day, that's probably for you. So we're implementing things like key takeaways and intended audiences and, very specific descriptions for all of that breakout content so people can make the right choices for what they're looking to get out of the event. And it's still broad reaching and is still accessible and available to anyone that wants to learn, entry level or seasoned professional, but what you're getting when you walk into a room.
How do you guys specifically come up with the ideas for these presenters and these speakers? Because they're really, some of these people I'm like, I never thought of that person coming and speaking. Where do you guys source your inspiration? Do you guys, cumulative team? I know you obviously get feedback from attendees as well. How do you guys tactically find those people and know they're a good fit? Because that's one unique thing is you never have the same keynotes year after year. They're always new people.
We talk about it a lot. We do have an internal group of people that meets pretty much weekly to talk about who makes sense to have on this stage and why. And I think something that I've always been very, very proud of for our entire team is that I think we're a team made up of curious, educated, well-informed people who genuinely like this stuff. Like, I don't go home at the end of the day and watch the news or read a book or look at a magazine or even watch, e-news to find out what's going on because I have to. I do it because I genuinely personally enjoy it and like care about this stuff. And I think that pretty much goes across the board for all of us. I think I could speak for every single person on our team when I say that. And it's no one person's job to come up with the lineup, but everybody comes into the office and says, hey, I read this book. Hey, I read this article. I think this person could be interesting. Hey, did you ever know that so-and-so has a company? Like, they'd be really interesting to talk about that. And no one ever thinks of them as a business owner. They just think of them as, an athlete. And we all care. And so we all talk about it day in and day out. And over time, that turns into our speaker lineup.
Yeah, I think last year John Cena was one of the biggest surprises for me, and I know a lot of my colleagues and friends who attended. They were all like, "Why is John Cena a keynote?" And he blew us out of the water. Like, that was just like.
Can we tell the story of how that came to be?
Please do.
Please. Kim went on vacation and said, we had to, confirm a last keynote while she was going to be gone.
No way.
Said, don't do anything dumb. And we're like, yeah, fine, we won't. And she comes back and she says, who the hell why is John Cena speaking at my event? Like, what is this? This is lunacy. We're all like, he'll be fine, Kim. Like, he's cool for all these reasons. Like, he speaks Mandarin. Like, we went through the whole list of like reasons that we thought he was really going to be amazing. And obviously it worked out. But Kim was not solely sold on him from the start.
In my defense, I saw him speak at South by Southwest earlier in the year, and I had thought he was very intelligent and very well spoken. And I had shared this with the team, and everyone went, no, they don't get that. And we moved on. And then all I have to do is leave. Like, so John was a lovely human being.
That's awesome. And I think, while we're talking about content, let's talk about Inbound Studio. How did this come about? And, what is this future? I think a lot of event organizers that I speak to struggle with that 365 engagement. Like, how do you get these attendees to be engaged year round? And I think TED does it really well. And now with Inbound Studio, so do you. So, what are you finding to be most effective? How did this come about? And kind of where is this going in the future?
Kim, I'm happy to answer, but do you want to jump in on how and why it came about?
Sure, I can give you the beginnings of it all, and then this really has been Laura's baby, and she's grown it, and she's the host and executive producer of the show, so she can actually give you all the insight. So we were looking, I think it was around 2016. We had, we have a lot of big name talent that comes to Inbound, and we're always, as a team, as to echo what Laura said, like very much consuming content, on a second by second basis. I know I personally drive everybody crazy because I follow over 1,000 Instagram accounts and consume content like crazy, and always send people, oh, did you see this? What about this idea? And it's like, okay, it's the day before the event. Can we stop now? So when we look at those talent, we're always trying to think about what are the multiple angles we can tell their story, and also what else can we sort of work with them to achieve. And we do a very good job of, like, we don't just stay in our office, which is in Cambridge in Massachusetts. We, with the studio now, but even before the studio, always spent a lot of time in New York and LA and somewhat in San Francisco, building relationships with different publicists, different managers, different agents, different folks that had like things coming out that they wanted to promote. So long story short, when we were leading into 2016, we were lucky enough to have Anna Kendrick, who was one of our keynote speakers at the time, and she had her book coming out, which was Scrappy Little Nobody, and her publicist was really excited about this, and they actually rush ordered the book for us because it was due out a week after the event. So they did basically pre-sales with us at Inbound on site, and Anna signed 400 books. And we were like, hey, if you want this additional promotional opportunity, we could probably do like a Facebook Live with her. And they were like, yeah, cool, like let's do it. And that is kind of really where it started. It was very opportunistic. It wasn't us sort of, thinking about a long-term strategy. We knew in the back of our mind that Facebook Live was coming out. We knew that we had always been quoted like live streaming costs for the event that were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there was this new technology that was really easy, even just for at the event itself. We also knew that we needed to do a better job of some of the videos and the content that we captured at the event and promoting that and putting it out there. But I think very strongly that you need to think like a marketer. Someone who's physically present at an event absorbing a 45-minute talk is not going to necessarily want to sit down at their computer and watch a 45-minute video. People operate and consume content in different mediums in very different ways. And you can't just think about like, oh, I just take this thing that's an in-person experience and put it over here on this channel. Each channel has its own behavior. And so when we worked with Anna's team, and we also had Alec Baldwin on site with us that year too, and his team were open to it as well. So we did some recordings with him too. We didn't promote it, we didn't do anything, and we had like 33,000 views of our Facebook Live content, just in like 2 or 3 days during the event, and obviously there was a long tail on that as well. So we sat down afterwards and we're doing some longer term planning, and we were like, okay, we really need to keep our conversation going. We know we can't just take straight up 45-minute like keynote recordings and plop them on YouTube and that's it. We need to actually play to this medium, and we need to think about what is it that we want to get out of this. Yes, there's the community and brand building aspect to it, but there's also our relationships with some of these very big name talent. And ultimately we want to be perceived as a platform for people who have a different sort of business story to tell to come and share that. And we think of ourselves much more as a media entity in that way, as an event. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. You need to shift your thinking to, I'm a marketer, I'm a media planner, I'm like somebody who's thinking multi-channel, versus, oh my God, there's just so much to do on logistics. And that would be my one biggest piece of advice on how we got to the Inbound Studio. And we had no team to do the Inbound Studio when we started. It was like nights and weekends, we like to say at HubSpot. Laura was on the PR team, and we coerced her to come over and do some interviews. And we started thinking about some themes, and we had some themed episodes to start. And we've adjusted our format and we've scaled it. And we've been on the road now for just a little bit over a year. And Laura can actually take over here and tell you kind of what happened.
Yeah, and Kim laid it out very nicely, but it's very much about going outside the week of the event and continuing to have interesting conversations with interesting people doing interesting things. And all the people that we talk to for the Inbound Studio are people that we would absolutely have come join us at Inbound and talk on a stage. But you know what? Sometimes they can't, or schedules don't allow for that, or sometimes we don't have enough slots for enough people. And so it just expands the opportunity for us to continue to create that type of content and have that type of conversation, not only with more people, but also for more people. It's not lost on us that despite the growth of the event and how rapid it's been and how much we love that not everyone can come to Boston in September to be with us in person, but they might still get really great value out of what we have to offer. They also might not realize they want to come to Boston in September, but if they check us out and are able to interact with us and understand what we're all about through the studio, that might be what it takes to say, you know what, I am going to take that trip or buy that ticket. And so we've seen a lot of, we're excited about the success there and just the opportunity to use the studio as a way to grow the overall Inbound brand. I think one of the biggest things for me is ever since we have started the studio in earnest, like Inbound is no longer an event, it's a brand, and it encompasses an event and a media platform and a media entity, and they're one and the same in many ways and all working towards the same cause. To Kim's point, we started off thinking about these things in terms of themes, and that worked for us to get off the ground. And then we kind of were putting ourselves in a similar position as you might think of the event. It was like, well, what if we want to talk to this one person in June for the, empathy and diversity theme, but they're not available? Why should we pigeonhole ourselves into not ever being able to talk to them because we missed the boat on that month? And so we kind of pivoted to be able to have a more fluid release of content and talk to people whenever it worked for us and for them to really be able to best get their stories out. And I think that's worked really, really nicely for us. And we've been able to have some incredible conversations with people that I've certainly been lucky enough to sit down with and meet, and have really surprised us and been thoughtful and talked about some unique things that are really additive to the overall inbound experience.
I think it also creates, it's obviously a side effect, and that's what inbound's all about, is the side effect of the marketing as well, is that people are staying engaged all the time. They're seeing your brand more often than they want to go. So I wanted to kind of really quick before I pivot is I want to give a shout out to some of the people watching the show. Kyle Hillman on Facebook Live left a comment talking about how you guys had such diverse backgrounds, saying this industry is such a mashup of careers, which I definitely agree with. So on that side, obviously you guys obviously come from like huge marketing backgrounds and are like legends in marketing. I want to talk a little bit about like how you guys get butts in seats. Give me a heads up as far as like what are your guys' big tactics that are working for you for getting people to buy tickets, get them to come back, and everything like that. So Elijah, you want to kind of kick that one off?
Yeah, it's honestly not super exciting. And if you're expecting some cool silver bullet that you've never heard, I'm really sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. But I've kind of been the face on inbound emails, not anymore, but for a long time in 2013, 2016, 2017. So like I've seen it for a long time, and what has worked fundamentally really hasn't changed. Obviously, we're introducing new channels like the studio and leading into social more, new social channels come and go and all that over the time. But really what we find works is email and price increases. And those are the things that really more than anything are what drive, people just buy the tickets and show up. There's nothing like, that sense of urgency and that, oh shit, if I wait, I'm going to spend an extra, X $100. Like that is really what gets people motivated versus, we can throw all the amazing content out there in the world, but they are still going to procrastinate because they're human, and really you need kind of the carrot and the stick to make that happen in a lot of ways. So, in the 5 years that, I've kind of been on and off doing promotions for an event like Inbound, that's consistently been what, more than anything, really, really drives the results in the short term. And obviously all the brand building, all the content that we do has a massive halo effect. And I also think one of the biggest things that leads to, more success and being able to grow easily is just putting on a great event. And obviously when we come out of a great event year, it's so much easier to sell tickets for next year on the spot and to continue nurturing those people and getting people to come back versus other years which haven't been as hot. It's a lot tougher to kind of climb up that hill. So not surprisingly, like we see in any industry, happy customers are kind of the biggest lever for growth in a lot of ways.
So I kind of have a unique experience with Inbound because I attended, before I started my company 2.5 years ago, so I guess 3 years ago, my first one, I was with my last company as director of marketing, and I'm a live tweeter, so I tweet like crazy on site. And I will tell you, for the first time, and I've been attending, events and conferences for years, for the first time I was getting responses, and I felt like I was getting to know the brand on a personal level that I didn't experience anywhere else, which actually eventually led to what I do now in my company is social media for conferences and events. But what was really cool was that experience of getting to know the faces and getting to know the people. So can you share a little bit about kind of your social media strategy and how you engage with the attendees? Because I know that's a big driver for probably bringing back return attendees as well.
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about this, and Laura, if you want to as well. I think our social is interesting in a lot of ways, and I think in a lot of ways we're not a fantastic case study. I think in other ways we are. Historically, the way that it's happened on site versus year round has been very, very different. And I think especially in the days pre-studio, it was very tough for us to fill a social calendar for the other 360 days of the year because there wasn't a ton going on. There's only so many, like Kim was saying, like 45-minute sessions that you can kind of try to cram down people's throats in the off year. It's just not the kind of content that people necessarily respond to when they're not physically at an event and looking for that kind of content. So for most of the year, honestly, if you look back even a year or two, our social presence was far from fantastic, to be honest, versus what you're talking about on site, where we really bring together like, like a SWAT team of social people. Like we bring probably half a dozen people who the rest of the year don't really work in inbound super closely. We kind of bring in these volunteers who help us with that, and they're the ones who are really engaging with attendees and building that social presence. So we have that full staffing when there are, so many people excited to talk with us and so much to talk about. We can really lean into that. But I think Studio has really enabled us to also lean into our audience and what there is to talk about the rest of the year. So Laura, if you want to say anything else about that, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. And I think, yes, absolutely, the studio and just in general, some of the changes that we've made in how we're thinking about content in general have allowed us to have a different and probably a stronger presence year round on social media. But I think just to add on to what you said about on site at the event, Elijah, is that we know how engaged our audience is on social media. Part of the reason we bring that SWAT team in is because we know people are going to be tweeting, and we know they're excited, and we know they're flooding the stream with the hashtag and @ mentions and telling us which speakers they're excited about and telling us if the line at the food trucks are too long and whatever it might be. And so knowing that about our own audience, that's a key communication channel for them throughout the week, just like an email or a message from the MC on stages. And so we take that part really seriously in terms of like the attendee experience aspect of the event. It's not just social media, it's the overall what it means to be on site. And so I think we've always known that about our audience, and we've just seen that grow as the event's grown. And so having that touch point and that level of engagement has remained important for us throughout the week. And I think we've gotten better and better each year as how we think about that. Last year we were doing a lot of giveaways and book signings and, hey, come to this meet and greet that maybe you weren't originally signed up for because because we saw people as engaged as they were on social media. But I think the key there for us is really just being in tune with who our attendees and our audiences, and knowing them really well, and knowing what they love and what they're passionate about. And like social media is one of those things. And so we're not going to skimp out on that for them the week that we're all together. And Inbound is very much about bringing together a community of people and an overall movement of people. And if connecting on Twitter or connecting on Instagram or connecting on Facebook is how that community talks to each other, then we should be a part of that too.
That's awesome. I love how you guys bring the community all together and using social media to do that. I wanted to pivot towards something really tactical that the planners out there can take home with them. And you guys have all mentioned different pieces of parts of the team. Elijah mentioned there's volunteers that kind of come in on a temporary basis to help flood the social media inboxes, everything like that. I want to talk a little bit about what it takes in the village that you guys have created. And feel free, I'll start off with Megan. If you can start off by telling us a little bit about how is the team structured, who makes decisions on what, and then also if you guys all want to start chiming in, like where do you guys pull resources in from outside, maybe even from HubSpot itself, from vendors, everything like that. How does the team structured, and how does this all come together? Because obviously you four don't do all the work. Who else is a part of this team, I guess?
Sure. No, it's not just the four of us, certainly. The Inbound team is 19, and that's those of us that work on this kind of year-round full-time. So it's the operations team that sits with me, that does all the logistics and behind the scenes, the content and talent team that sits with Laura, user experience, promotions, sponsorship are the other kind of components of those of us that do this year-round. We certainly pull a ton of support from HubSpot as well. So we have our marketing team that jumps in and helps out with us. Our IT team, our security team all help us out with that on-site component. And then we have some just really great volunteers who will come and either do shifts during the days or will take on a bigger role of manning the info desk and things like that. So we're super grateful to have a company that's really supportive of us. And then we also bring in some great vendor partners. So we have a production vendor, a logistics vendor, some creative vendors, talent, technology, that we've been really lucky that have been, most of them have been with us for a few years. So they have a really strong understanding of Inbound and our event and our brand, and are really great partners with us to help us be successful. But it certainly takes more than just us, and we're really lucky to have a lot of great support.
Oh, looks like we might have lost Megan right there.
Everyone.
Everyone. Oh, the HubSpot internet has gone down, it seems. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how big the team has to be to pull off this sort of event. And I think that, a lot of people out there might be really jealous to think of the team size and what kind of goes into it. As you were kind of uncovering when it came to the social element, Alex, like how literally so many different people come together to make this all happen.
Well, and it shows on site too, because, especially from the social aspect, I'm not surprised to hear that they bring in 6 people. You're back.
I don't know what. Sorry.
It's all good. That's why we do this live, because it's way more fun doing offline.
Looks like we had a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue, but everyone is headed back in, so we're here. Sorry about that.
So what happened is the IT team felt that Meghan was not complimentary enough in her description of them, so they.
I love it. Well, why don't we while we keep going, kind of pick off where Meghan kind of kicked off. The question I kind of had as a follow-up was, what part of the team do you guys think is critical, but most planners do not think about having on your team? So Kim, if you maybe want to start off with that, like you're obviously very good about making sure you're pulling outside the box, not thinking out planner. What sort of parts of the organization do you think are really critical that really allow you to push this event to the next level?
Can I answer that a slightly different question that I think, gets to that? I think, it's if you were like on my board, right, of which Brian Halligan, our CEO of HubSpot, often says to me, I'm like on your board, Kim, you're running like a mini business there. And I go, yeah, okay. If you guys were on my board and you were pushing me on who and I needed to hire and what skill sets and why, I, of course, not giving up any of them that we have right now because they're all critical. The thing I think that most companies struggle with, not necessarily the event team themselves or the people planning the event, is most companies struggle to wrap their head around why a team needs to plan something like this year round, why the team needs to be as big or as many diverse skill sets as it actually is. It's very hard for most companies that just don't operate within a project like this to understand what it really takes. And one of the key things I think that's changed the game for us on Inbound has been to take a long range planning approach. And so for us, we sort of have leverage in different points, right? So HubSpot as a company is 12 to 13 years old, and we have to sign, venue contracts maybe 10 years out, because that might be the availability that there is in the locations that we want. And so I'm able to go to HubSpot as a business and say, hey, we need to think about this now because we're assuming the risk now, basically by signing some of these venue contracts. And that helps to kickstart the conversation. So the thing I think that people are struggling with is you have to get out of reaction mode. You have to get out of, oh shit, I just need to make it for the next month till I get to the event, or the next 3 months, or the next 6 months, or whatever your timeline is. You need to make it 3 years to 5 years from now. And you need to be very honest and have big, honest conversations with your internal stakeholders. And the way I describe it is this is like turning an elephant, you got to turn it one step at a time, once a year. So you've got a small window. So we need to be really crystal clear on what is this and what is it not? And what does this mean? And how are we going to pull this off? And what does it take? And what's the impact of if we don't have X, Y, and Z skill set on the team? One of the things we did last year was go through an exercise of succession planning. Somewhat, we could do a better job. There's more to do there. And we started to reorg and regroup our team around sort of 3 key buckets. 2 of them, Meghan and Laura's team, we've done a good job of having a team on operations / logistics, a team on content and talent. And then the group that Elijah lives within is certainly still a lot of additional sort of niche skill sets that we need to figure out how do we find the common ground amongst. You always have to ask yourself as a team, if any one of us was hit by a bus today, what would the impact of that be? So as we're not back in reaction mode, you got to keep moving forward and making progress.
I think you just won the hearts of every event organizer. I know you say you don't consider yourself an event professional, but everyone is feeling you right now because that's key, right? You hear it all the time that these organizations don't understand, how an event is run and why you need these teams. And I think the reorg and that idea of these buckets is really smart. I do want to touch on something because we are running out of time. Something unique that Inbound does, and maybe Megan, you can answer this question. You have a really unique expo floor design with Club Inbound. How do you work with your exhibitors and your sponsors to meet their needs? And do you set any rules specifically for your exhibitors and how they interact and everything like that? Because it really is unique, and I think it's a model that more people are trying to do and oftentimes are failing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I think about Club Inbound and the design of it, it really stems from not being a traditional exhibitor floor. We really shy away from that feeling that you're kind of walking down these aisles and are just waiting to kind of be grabbed and spoken to, that it really is this experience for attendees where they walk in and they get to see these really amazing installations and really awesome creative production that then happens to have exhibitors and sponsors within it in a really kind of natural way. So you kind of don't realize what it is until you're in it, but you're kind of excited to be walking through there and you don't feel like, I kind of have to go through this to get to where I'm going. So I think that's the key to the space design, that it comes from the creative first and the attendee experience of what that space feels like. And then it serves the functional purpose of being that place for exhibitors who then benefit from the fact that we've created this venue that people want to be in and want to spend their time in. And I think it helps them actually have more productive conversations and meet more people because people are excited to be in the space. I'll let Kim jump in a little bit, who works with our sponsorship team on like rules and regulations that we set for them. But really the goal of Club Inbound is that it feels like this destination for attendees. And then we use that to benefit our exhibitors and our sponsors. And I think they really appreciate that.
If I can expand on that just a tiny bit, I think that's such a good point, that it is really an attendee first experience, where I think a lot of events, it's very exhibitor first, and they're trying to meet the needs primarily of those people, where we've taken the opposite approach. And, I think in a lot of ways, if you showed some completely cold exhibitor what it looks like to exhibit at Inbound on paper, they'd be like, oh, this is terrible. Why would I want to do this? It sounds awful.
Loud music, what?
You're right. There's a lot of things like that where it's like a little bit of like a disconnect. But just like Megan's saying, when you add in then how attendees relate to that and how they're then able to engage with the sponsors and exhibitors so much more organically than they are in like the sterile traditional expo floor environment, then the sponsors, their eyes light up and they realize that this really is a game changer and that the results they're seeing are so much better, even though it is a little counterintuitive.
I love that. I think that's the most interesting thing about it is when I came down the escalator for the first time and I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected. And I'd seen videos and you just like don't quite understand it until you experience it. So if you guys ever get a chance, go to Club Inbound and see what it's like. But it's totally counterproductive. I talked to so many different people who are doing like learnings and things like that on expo floors. And they always are like, well, we have to figure out a way to make it quiet. So then that way the exhibitors don't get bugged. But at Club Inbound at like 5 o'clock happy hour, you guys have like a full line array, a DJ, you can't hear anything, but the show floor is packed, people talking, exhibitors, everything like that, which I think is absolutely awesome. I think that we might have to start to wrap up. We have 10 minutes or so left, and I want to kind of get to resources because you guys have a ton of awesome resources, apps you're using, everything like that. Before we get to that one, though, I want to do our one tip question. So start thinking about all the amazing knowledge that you guys have from all the years of planning this awesome event. What is one tip that you have for event planners out there when it comes to planning their event? Whoever wants to jump in right first, feel free. It's the hardest question. Go ahead, Laura.
I can jump in. I think it's like you live and breathe this every day. We all live and breathe this every day. And so there are things that may seem incredibly obvious to you, from the description of a session to what a sign should say to where something is in the building, any of that stuff, to why someone's speaking at the event. It makes sense in your head because you've thought about it for 364 days before the event starts. It may or may not make sense to your attendee. And so I think thinking about them constantly, thinking about how they're going to see something, how they're going to experience something, how it's going to make them feel, how they're going to go back to their hotel room at the end of the night or back to their desk at the end of the week, and what they're going to remember and what the impact of what you put together is going to have on them, because that's what you're doing it for. But sometimes it's just so easy to lose ultimate sight of that. And so at any moment in time, whatever it is that you're doing to plan, you know, constantly just asking the question of like, what's this going to mean for the person coming and sitting on the other side of the, you know, in the chair, in the room, or walking down the hallway. Just like, you can't ask yourself that question enough.
I love it. I feel like this is the like get out of your event planning brain episode for sure. Megan, do you want to go with your one tip? Did we lose the Wi-Fi again?
I think so.
I think we did. We are just having the worst luck of all. And I made a comment before the show started that I said, man, good thing the Wi-Fi
The
works.
Wi-Fi is really good.
I'm just all full of bad luck today.
So I do want to share some of my personal experiences with Inbound while we're waiting for them to come back. You know, I've been 3 years, and one of the things that's really unique, I find, you know, you can tell that they think attendee first, right?
And they definitely do.
And they're back. But you can just tell, even if you can't attend, just do yourself a favor and follow them on Twitter, because you see these communities, these smaller communities, and these like sub hashtags come about, like Inbound Solo and last year Black at Inbound, and you can really tell that it is attendee first the way that they do that. So I just wanted to share that while we were waiting for you guys to come back.
Yeah. Hashtag fangirling. All right. It seemed like Laura was wrapping up. And so we want to kick it over to you, Megan, to share your one tip that you have for event planners.
Yeah, I think for event planners, it's about having really good partners, whether it's you're on a small scale and it's the team that you have in that room and you're responsible for everything. You need to trust those people. You need to work together. And when you scale up and you're kind of at the scale that we are, and you're able to bring in vendor partners and other folks that you can hire to help you out, that there are people that are on your team, that it's not just kind of that client vendor relationship, but that it's a real partnership, because we couldn't do what we do without our vendor teams. And I think it's really important to have partners in your corner who help you achieve your goals.
I think that's huge. I think a lot of planners sometimes think like, how can we move as much of this internally as possible? But if you build a good partnership, you know, you don't have to focus on everything, and you can rely on someone else's skill set, which is huge.
Absolutely.
That's huge. All right, Kim, what about you? What's your one tip that you have for planners?
Mine is, I think it's more specific to when you're thinking about your team. I think, you know, if you have any experience working at an event or a live, you know, in production, those like on set days and those on site days can be very stressful, and can be, I personally love it. It's very like fast and interesting, and there's like loads going on and everything's just clicking, but there inevitably is going to be a curveball. And I think you need to be conscious as a team of talking about the what ifs and putting just as much time into preparing yourself and your team, and you know work to the buddy system of like that sort of emotional support, and like what is your emotional intelligence sort of, you know, focus as a team. And you know, we spend a lot of time as a team being as very open and honest and constructive as we can with each other, and calling each other out on like, well, have we thought about this or that or the other thing? But also they're like, well, what do we do if, you know, we had a big name talent that was going to do Inbound Rocks a couple of years ago cancel, you know, 24 hours before the event happened. And I remember sitting down with our talent team at the time, and there was something else happened, which I can't even remember. And they were like, so this happened, and then this person, you know, had a medical emergency and they can't fly out from LA. And I was like, is that everything? And they were like, isn't that enough? And so I think we as a team do a good job of talking about, like, we invent scenarios. What if the BCEC gets flooded? What if this? What if that? And you know, 50% of the time they're crazy scenarios, and 50% of the time they can happen, and you need to prepare for that.
Ooh, I love it. The think of the what ifs. What's that? There's a really good book called like What If, right? Too. That's like that every possible scenario. What would happen if, right? Reminds me of that, but for event planners.
Yeah.
Awesome. Elijah, what about you? What would be your one tip for event planners?
Yeah, I think mine dovetails with Laura's a little bit, and I think it's really important to just be kind of maniacal about simplicity and scalability. I think with events, especially when you get to kind of the scale that we're at, it's so easy to introduce so much kind of unnecessary complexity, and I think we saw that even with some of the stuff that she was talking about earlier on like how we organize track content. A lot of the stuff that we were doing there was really complicated and honestly didn't make a lot of sense to people who weren't inside our heads. So when we took a step back and talked to attendees and thought about that, what we came out with was like almost stupidly simple, like call the marketing content marketing and the sales content sales and so on, like duh. But we think that kind of thinking makes a big impact in terms of people who aren't inside our brains and who are dealing with other things the rest of the year to really be able to make the most out of their time with inbound. And I think it translates, to so many areas of the event world. I think I kind of annoy the rest of my team where if we're talking about some surprise delight moment that, gives a just like week changing experience to 5 people. I'm like, yeah, but like, instead of making it 100 times better for 5 people, couldn't we make it 1% better for 5,000 people? And I think that kind of infrastructure thinking, as I like to call it, is really important as you get to a bigger size, especially, and need to be keeping everything running really smoothly for, essentially a small town of people, in addition to making some really, really special moments along the way.
Amazing. So cool. So cool. All right. So my favorite question of all, which is the resources question. So obviously you guys are chock full of awesome resources, whether it's books, blogs, scuba masks, apps that you guys use on a daily basis, softwares that you couldn't live without. This is your guys' chance to kind of share each of your favorite resources, whether it's anything at all. So Elijah, I'm going to kick it back to you. You're the tech guy, so you got to have a ton of awesome tech. What sort of stuff do you rely on? What's your favorite resources that you have out there?
Yeah, so to kind of echo what I just said, I also think with technology, simple is better. And I know there's so many point solutions cropping up. I think a lot of people, especially in marketing, have probably seen the, like MarTech ecosystem slides where it just like balloons every year. I feel like we're just having a similar thing happening specifically in event tech now, where, it used to be like you had like Cvent and that was it. And now there's like 30,000 like bit players doing some part of the event space. And I think it's really important to focus on what's actually important and what you can use to deliver a very holistic experience for attendees versus bringing in 80 different point solutions that don't really talk to each other. So I think we have partnered with a company called Bizzabo this year, which we use for kind of registration and for agenda management. And they're a newer kind of startup-y company kind of in that space. And I really like working with them because their approach is very modern and very attendee focused. So it really aligns very well with how we think about things. So that's been fantastic working with them. I think they're kind of the cornerstone of our event tech stack at this point. And I think it's really important to have those kind of strong foundations rather than just a hodgepodge of things.
Awesome. And we've had them on a show a couple times. And I think they're also HubSpot customers too. Me and David Epstein are huge inbound nerds on all that sort of stuff. Megan, what about you? What sort of resources do you have that you want to share with the audience? Anything at all?
Yeah, so on the operations side, we are heavy into kind of all of the documents and the timelines and stuff like that keep us organized. So project briefs, timelines are really kind of our bread and butter and how we get started on everything. We use Google Drive so that we have easy access for everybody to share. And I think when I think about our vendors, we have vendors from across the country. So being able to video call with them consistently really helps us build that relationship with them throughout the year. So those are some of the technology and the things that my team uses day to day.
Awesome. Kim, what about you? What are your favorite resources, books, blogs, tech, anything at all?
So on books and stuff, I tend to read a lot more management books. Some of my favorite stuff is Brene Brown stuff. I really, really like her Daring Greatly book. One of the things I use a lot is a way to talk to your team or your stakeholder or your colleague when you think you know what's going on, but you may not, is you use a phrase that Brene suggests is hey, here's the thing, Will, that I made up. And you say, I thought blah, blah, blah. And it's a very not accusatory way to share what's on your mind and be honest about it. And it gets a lot of stuff out in the open. I really in terms of I listen to a bunch of different types of podcasts. I also listen to a lot of cooking podcasts. I think it's important to have an escape and you need to be able to have that balance. I think for me, the one thing that I really love on the tech side is just Google Drive. I'm really boring. I'm very frustrated when everyone titles the top of every document with inbound this, inbound that, inbound the other, because I have probably 20 tabs open in my Chrome browser and it all starts with IN and I can't quickly go through. So I'm a pain in the ass going, can you retitle this? Can you move this so I don't have to find it? Like, it should be intuitive. I'm very, very militant on our document organization.
I mean, you have to be when how many tabs do you have open? Oh my gosh. Like you said, like 20?
That's probably
on a good day.
Doubt it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. Laura, what about you?
I agree with Kim. I feel like I live and die by Google Drive, Sheets, Docs, all of that. It's far and away, I find it the easiest way to collaborate on anything and everything. And, you know, to Megan's point, with all the vendors that we have, like, that just makes it easy to communicate with people that aren't physically with you as well. On the social media side, we've started using Asana as a project management tool, because the way that we handle a lot of the posting that we do on, you know, there's all different people on the team. We've got studio content going out, we've got event promo going out, we've got general brand information out, and there's different people on the team that are sort of thinking about that and responsible for what that might look like. And so Asana has proven to be a really nice tool for us to just like keep everyone updated on what's going on, where, and what the editorial calendar for that kind of stuff looks like. So that's been a really good tool for us. And then it's not really a tool per se or like a resource, but I think if you have the means and the ability, and it doesn't have to mean like traveling far and wide, but just going to other events and seeing other things is something that we all try to do as much as we can. And I always find it to be, you know, yeah, sure, you get ideas for what you might want to do or see something cool. You also get ideas for what you don't want to do or what you never want to see happen at your event, or how someone handles, you know, a line or a this or a that. And that's stuff that sometimes like technology can't help you with, but just being there in person and living it as an attendee is so incredibly valuable. And every time any of us, I think, gets the chance to do that, we all come back and are like, oh yeah, whatever. And, you know, Kim mentioned it earlier, a handful of us went to South by Southwest this year. Like, that's great, but you could also like go to, I don't know, an event at the museum down the street in whatever city it is that you live in and still get those same types of takeaways. So that's hugely important for me.
Awesome. Well, you know, it's 6:00 now, so it's time for the show to end. Unfortunately, I know I want to sit here for hours and just absorb everything inbound. I guess I'll have to wait till September to actually go to Inbound. Thank you again, Laura, Kim, Megan, and Elijah. You've been incredible. If you don't know what Inbound is and you've been watching and now you're like blown away, check them out on social media. Check out Inbound Studio. Attend Inbound. It's really worthwhile. Even if marketing is not your thing, just sit in on the keynotes and the spotlights. That's literally all I did last year, and I loved it. I was so inspired. But thank you again for being here. I know we've been dying to get you on, so this has been very exciting for Will and I. For all of you watching at home, this has been #EventIcons. We record live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch behind the scenes on Facebook Live. We also release the show every following Tuesday on iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, whatever your favorite podcast app is. And of course, you can find us online at event-icons.com, along with show notes and links to the resources that have been shared. But the best way to join us is live here on Zoom. So sign up at event-icons.com and join the chat live. We also want to know what you think. So use Twitter using the #EventIcons, or join the EventIcons Facebook group. Tell us who you want to see on the show. What icons do you want? Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week here on #EventIcons.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #EventIcons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway.
And join the social conversation. Sponsored by Little Bird Told Media.
Just tag your post with hashtag EventIcons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on hashtag EventIcons.